Welcome to All in All. Step right up, because today we are taking a deep dive into a name that's not just famous, it's practically synonymous with American entertainment and imagination. Walt Disney.
It really is a household name, absolutely.
We've gathered a stack of sources, a whole collection of articles, research, notes, biographical details essentially, everything you shared with us on the topic.
Quite a pile of material to sort through.
And our mission, our journey together in this deep dive, is to unpack all of this material, to really understand the figure behind the name, the sprawling company he built, and its enduring and, well, complex influence on the world.
That's exactly right. We're going to trace the story from its very beginning. The origin, explore its significance, the why it matters behind the magic.
Right.
Delve into its profound impact on society and culture. See how the company has evolved drastically since Walt's passing. And finally, tie it all back to its practical relevance for you, the listener, today.
It's a subject with immense breadth, isn't it? Everything from intimate biographical points to complex business strategies and significant societal implications.
Definitely. And we understand the weight of this material, and our approach will be to present the information directly from these sources, impartially, focusing solely on helping you understand the content provided in this deep dive.
Absolutely. This is about setting the stage for a detailed, multifaceted exploration of a truly monumental figure and the extraordinary empire that grew from his vision. It's not just the story of a man, it's the story of American culture, innovation, and business over the last century, as reflected in the sources.
Big story.
So let's unpack this story right from the very start.
Okay, where do we begin?
So where does this incredible saga begin? Like many figures who achieve legendary status in America, our sources tell us it starts from what are described as humble and perhaps surprisingly obscure beginnings.
Right. Walter Elias Disney, born December 5th, 1901 in Chicago.
He was the fourth of 5 children born to Elias and Flora Cole Disney, who are depicted as a typical Midwest farm family of the early 20th century. Humble roots.
And from the accounts we have, Walt's early family life wasn't exactly, well, idyllic, was it?
No, not from these descriptions. His father, Elias Disney, is frequently described in the notes as being quite harsh, adhering to a very strict moral code.
Right. We read that there was little tolerance for what we might consider normal childhood activities. No playtime, no games, no toys. Life was centered around hard work and discipline.
Which makes Walt's early experiences on the farm in Marceline, Missouri stand out even more. The family moved there when he was 4.
Marceline seems key.
Despite the strict environment and the loneliness that must have come with it, those years on the farm seem to have been incredibly formative for his imagination.
That's what the sources suggest. How he coped with that isolation by making friends with the farm animals, essentially anthropomorphizing them, giving them personalities and voices in his young mind.
There's even a wonderful detail that his best friend as a child was a pig he named Porker.
Porker. Yeah, and remarkably, our material states that Walt himself later said that Porker was the model for the character of the foolish pig in the famous Three Little Pigs short film.
Wow. It's a poignant detail, isn't it? It illustrates how deeply those early connections to animals and that habit of imbuing them with human traits influenced his creative vision years down the line, shaping the very fabric of characters we know today.
Absolutely, those early seeds of imagination.
Here's where his life takes a significant turn, according to the sources. The family moved again, this time to Kansas City, when Walt was 10 years old.
Big change.
Imagine the transition from a rural farm in Marceline, described as almost idyllic in retrospect for fostering his early imagination, to a bustling city. Life became dramatically different.
And harder, it sounds like. His father, Elias, bought a newspaper route.
And he didn't just manage it. He essentially forced Walt and his older brother, Roy, to work it relentlessly.
And by relentlessly, the sources mean truly grueling hours. They worked the route daily, starting at 3:30 a.m., delivering papers before school.
3:30 a.m. before school.
Yeah. Then they would work it again in the evening after school. The physical toll was immense. They were utterly exhausted.
And adding another layer of difficulty, Elias reportedly didn't let them keep their earnings.
He believed they were too young to understand the value of money, essentially taking their wages. Must have been incredibly frustrating and demoralizing for young boys working so hard.
Yet, despite this incredibly demanding schedule and his father's general disapproval of frivolous things like theater and movies, Walt's drive to pursue art remained. He found ways.
He really did. The sources tell us he took Saturday courses at the Kansas City Art Institute, actual formal training.
And he also enrolled in a correspondence course in drawing cartoons. So even in his limited free time, that passion was pulling him.
And he found alternative environments that nurtured this interest. At Benton Grammar School, he befriended Walter Pfeiffer.
The Pfeiffer family.
Yes, they became crucial. Their home was evidently a place where the arts, particularly theater and movie subjects his own father disapproved of, were embraced.
So he spent more time there.
Reportedly, significantly more time at the Pfeiffer home than his own, soaking up these new cultural experiences that would undoubtedly influence his later work.
You can see the pieces starting to come together.
Yeah.
His artistic inclinations were clear even then. At McKinley School, where he later attended, he was the school cartoonist.
Already finding that outlet.
Moving forward a few years, in 1918, Walt took a job at the Chicago Post Office. With World War I ongoing, he had a strong desire to join the Army, but he was too young, only 16.
Right, too young for the Army.
So after the war concluded in November 1918, he found another way to serve, joining the Red Cross.
And this decision led him to France in December 1918. He was part of a group of 50 men needed to drive ambulances to care for the sick and wounded in the aftermath of the war.
What was France like then?
The sources paint a vivid picture of Paris at that time, a city still bearing the scars of conflict uniforms everywhere, a visible military presence, a lack of food. He even recounts sleeping, covering himself with newspapers for warmth.
Rough conditions.
Despite the grim reality, there's a sense from the material that he enjoyed being there, experiencing a different world. He celebrated his 17th birthday alone, walking around the campground.
Alone on his birthday?
Yeah, though he later had a drink with a friend, finding a small moment of connection. And in a foreshadowing detail, he decorated his ambulance with cartoons.
Huh. Even then, art finds a way.
Always.
Upon returning from France, his path was clear. He wanted to be a cartoonist. He moved back to Kansas City and landed a job at Peasman Rubin Art Studio,
Peasman Rubin,
where he produced advertisements for local newspapers, magazines, and movie theaters. The sources describe these early cartoons as crude, certainly a far cry from the polished work the studio would later produce.
But crucial experience, right? Learning the ropes.
Exactly. Learning the craft and the business. And it was here that he met Ubi Iwerks.
Ubi Iwerks, a key figure. The sources describe Iwerks as shy, but possessing immense talent as a cartoonist and animator.
And they hit it off.
Quickly developed a deep friendship and a creative partnership that would be foundational. In 1920, they formed their own venture, Iwerks Disney Commercial Artists.
The first attempt.
But, like many early ventures, it struggled to gain traction. Clients were few and far between, and Iwerks eventually left, with Walt following suit shortly after.
Didn't give up, though.
No, Walt's entrepreneurial spirit wasn't extinguished. In 1922, he started a small company called Laugh-O-Grams, aiming to sell short animated films to local Kansas City companies.
Half-O-Grams.
It was during this period that the concept for the Alice comedies was germinating in his mind, that blend of live action, a real girl interacting with animated characters and settings.
But ahead of its time, really.
But despite the creative drive, Laugh-O-Grams ultimately faced the harsh reality of finances and went bankrupt.
Ouch, that must have hurt.
Could have been the end of the story for many, but the sources emphasize Walt's resilience. Instead of giving up, he made a bold move. He packed an unfinished print of the Alice comedies and headed west, destination Hollywood.
Wow, just packed up and went. It really was a leap of faith, arriving in Hollywood with little more than a print and a dream. He began working with distributors, hoping to sell his work, initially his reel titled Newman Laugh-O-Grams, as a regular feature.
And while setting up his new studio space in Hollywood, a key personal and professional connection was made. He met Lillian Bounds,
His future wife.
whom he hired as an ink and paint girl. Lillian's background is interesting too. Came from Idaho, studied secretarial work, moved to LA.
And Walt hired her.
Yes. The material mentions that Walt would drive his employees home in his secondhand car, and Lillian was always the last to be dropped off.
A car rides home.
These drives became opportunities for conversation where Walt would talk about his ambitions and plans. These discussions apparently led Walt to see her not just as an employee, but, well, as his future wife.
Before Mickey Mouse became the global icon, though, there was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, right? Created for Universal Studios.
Yes, Oswald. The sources describe Oswald as an earlier, popular character that gave Disney his first taste of widespread success.
But that ended badly.
It did. Disappointment and what Walt perceived as betrayal. During negotiations in 1928, his distributor, Charles Mintz, attempted to force salary cuts and essentially take control of the character by hiring away most of Walt's animation staff.
Wow, ruthless.
Walt and his brother Roy, refusing to be strong-armed, decided to walk away from Oswald after legal arbitration confirmed they had lost the rights. A major blow.
And it was on the train ride home from New York after losing Oswald that, according to company lore, often cited in the sources, the idea for Mickey Mouse was born.
Exactly. This loss, this feeling of having his character and team taken from him, directly fueled the creation of a new character, one they would own entirely.
And Mickey was huge from the start.
The popularity of Mickey Mouse was so immense and immediate that, as the sources point out, he quickly became the de facto company insignia. The premiere of Steamboat Willie in 1928 at the Colony Theater.
With sound.
Featuring synchronized sound, a novel innovation for animation at the time, was a sensation. It ran for 13 days and established Mickey as a star.
That moment was absolutely pivotal. It wasn't just the birth of a character. It was the launch pad for the creative and technological powerhouse the studio would become.
Moving to this next phase, Walt Disney Studio rapidly distinguished itself through animation prowess and a relentless drive to innovate.
You really see that focus on technology.
Indeed. One of the most significant areas of innovation was in technology. The Disney Studio was among the absolute pioneers in the widespread adoption of synchronized sound, as we saw with Steamboat Willie.
But they didn't stop there.
No. They were also early leaders in the use of full color in animated films. Bringing sound and color together transformed animation from a silent black and white novelty into a vibrant, immersive storytelling medium.
And perhaps one of their most ingenious technical advancements discussed in the sources was the multi-plane camera. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. You imagine it. A towering, complex device where a camera pointed downwards through multiple layers of artwork painted on glass cells.
So, layers of glass.
Right, with different background elements on each layer. The camera could move independently of the layers, and the layers could move independently too.
What did that achieve?
The insight here wasn't just technical complexity. It was about overcoming what the sources refer to as the essential flatness of traditional single-plane animation. It allowed them to create a sense of depth, perspective, and parallax motion that was revolutionary at the time.
Gave it a 3D feel almost.
Exactly, giving their animated worlds a feeling of realism and dimension.
And they tested this first.
They tested this groundbreaking technology in a silly symphony short titled The Old Mill, released in 1937. The sources describe the result as incredibly effective and poetic.
Poetic, I like that.
Demonstrating the camera's ability to create atmospheric effects, realistic falling rain, and a breathtaking sense of looking into a scene rather than just at a flat image. This was a proof of concept that would pay dividends in their future feature films.
Speaking of silly symphonies, these shorts were much more than filler cartoons, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Our material points to them being viewed as demonstrating the artistic modernism of Disney's work. Walt himself was aiming for a kind of perfect aesthetic vision.
Like giving feelings to objects.
Wanting to attribute intention, consciousness, and emotion not just to characters, but even to inanimate objects and natural elements within the animated world. Very ambitious.
It's interesting to know, too, how business strategy intersected with art even then.
How so?
To help boost the profile of the silly symphonies and leverage their rising star, Mickey, they initially had to associate the series with him.
Ah, right. Titling them Mickey Mouse Presents a Silly Symphony, even if Mickey didn't appear in the actual short, using that name recognition.
Clever marketing, even back then.
Definitely draw audiences into these more experimental artistic endeavors.
And these shorts also served as a testing ground for characters who would become icons. Donald Duck, for instance.
Donald, arguably one of the most famous animated characters globally, first appeared in the silly symphony called The Wise Little Hen in 1934.
And he just took off.
Donald quickly stood out. The sources highlight his distinct personality, his short fuse and tendency to lose his temper.
We all know that temper.
His recognizable sailor outfit, and of course his unique voice provided by Clarence Nash. He became famous for those explosive moments in shorts like Modern Inventions, Donald's Golf Game, Officer Duck, Window Cleaners, and Cured Duck.
People related to that frustration, I guess.
That relatable frustration resonated deeply with audiences, making him immensely popular alongside the more consistently cheerful Mickey.
Building on the success of the shorts and pushing the medium further, Walt had an ambitious, some might say audacious idea, a full-length animated feature film.
A huge leap. The project he chose was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This was a monumental undertaking for the studio and the animation industry as a whole, which had previously confined animation to shorts.
And people were skeptical.
Oh, the idea was met with significant skepticism, even within his inner circle. The sources mention that both his wife, Lillian, and his brother, Roy, who handled the studio's finances, thought it would fail.
Even Roy. Wow.
Hollywood artists and competitors were also dismissive, believing an audience couldn't sit through an animated film for over an hour, and some even worried the bright colors would strain viewers' eyes.
They called it Disney's folly. Right?
Exactly, Disney's folly before it was even finished.
But Walt, according to the material, was incredibly optimistic and unwavering in his belief. He was convinced that audiences and industry leaders alike would praise it.
You hear stories about how he conveyed that vision, pouring his energy into it, famously gathering his artists together and acting out all the parts himself to demonstrate the character's movements, emotions, and motivations.
Must have been quite a performance.
And his conviction paid off spectacularly. Snow White premiered in 1937 and became a critical and commercial triumph.
Changed everything.
It's cited in our sources as a central defining part of his legacy, not only proving that feature-length animation was viable, but also cementing the Disney Studio's reputation for quality and artistic excellence. Earned him that special Oscar, too.
The honorary one with the 7 little statuettes.
That's the one.
Following the success of Snow White, the studio entered a golden age of feature film production right up until World War II. Pinocchio, released in February 1940.
Another classic. Based on Carlo Collodi's story and highlighted as another masterpiece, it won Academy Awards for Best Song,
When You Wish Upon a Star.
which has since become the iconic company fanfare, and Best Scoring, showing the crucial role of music in Disney films.
Then came Fantasia in 1940. That was really different.
Perhaps their most experimental feature, yet composed entirely of animated sequences set to classical music performed by the Philadelphia Orchestra, conducted by Leopold Stokowski.
The ambition was huge. They rented a Broadway theater just for the recording.
Right, just to have adequate space for the orchestra and recording equipment. It premiered at the Sender Theater in Rockefeller Center and featured beloved segments like The Sorcerer's Apprentice, starring Mickey Mouse.
How was it received initially?
Mixed among critics. Some dismissed it as clownish degradation for using classical music with cartoons.
Harsh.
However, the sources also recognize it as a provocative aesthetic experiment, a pure showcase of the creator's artistic vision and willingness to take risks. Financially, it struggled initially.
Didn't make its money back right away.
Wasn't re-released theatrically in Walt's lifetime, though it was shown on television. It later found a new appreciation, rediscovered as a head film by counterculture audiences, and finding mainstream popularity with re-releases in 1974 and 1981.
Took a while to find its audience.
The last of these pioneering pre-WWII features we have information on is Bambi. Production began remarkably early, in 1937.
Started before Pinocchio and Fantasia were even out.
But it wasn't released until August 1942, after the U.S. had entered the war. It marked another departure, described as more serious in tone than previous films, with an all-animal cast and a narrative focused on the cycle of life.
More like a nature film almost.
Exploring territory akin to nature documentaries, which Disney would later delve into extensively.
The sources describe Bambi as beautiful, entertaining, evocative, and deeply touching, chronicling life stages from youth to adulthood with a focus on natural drama rather than explicit violence. Well, mostly.
Right, the thread is there. However, despite its eventual classic status and artistic merit, Bambi actually lost money at the box office upon its initial release, around $200,000 according to the material we have.
Wow, even Bambi lost money at first.
This underscores that even during this period of artistic triumph, the business side of filmmaking presented significant challenges.
And those financial realities, coupled with internal issues and global events, led the company into a period of significant challenges and required considerable evolution.
Right. The financial strain that was simmering came to a head, prompting Walt and Roy to make the company's first public stock offering in 1940 to raise needed capital.
Going public. A big step.
Hand in hand with the financial measures came heavy salary cuts for staff. The sources highlight that these cuts, combined with Walt's personality, often described as demanding and perhaps lacking direct praise, fueled deep resentment among the animators.
Which led to the strike.
This culminated in the 1941 animators' strike, a significant event in the studio's history that lasted for 5 weeks. A real rupture.
And Walt wasn't even there for the resolution.
An interesting detail from the material is that during the government-mediated negotiations to resolve the strike, Walt accepted an invitation from the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs for a goodwill trip to South America.
Convenient timing.
The sources suggest this timing was not coincidental, ensuring Walt was conveniently absent during a resolution that was expected to be unfavorable to the studio's management. This action, alongside the strike itself, had lasting repercussions.
Yeah, the strike resulted in several key animators leaving the studio. And the material indicates that Walt's relationship with many of his remaining staff members was permanently strained.
Changed the whole vibe.
Fundamentally changed the studio's dynamic from the highly collaborative environment of the early days. The strike also temporarily interrupted the production of Dumbo, which was released in 1941.
Ah, Dumbo. Maybe learning from the costs of Fantasia and Bambi, Dumbo was produced simply and inexpensively.
Cheaper to make.
Yet it resonated with audiences and received a positive reaction, a much-needed win at the time.
But the money troubles weren't over.
No, the financial difficulties didn't magically disappear after the strike. By 1944, the company had accumulated debts of $4 million with the Bank of America.
$4 million. That's huge for the time.
The sources credit the continued existence of the studio at this precarious time significantly to the faith of the bank's chairman and founder, Amedeo Giannini.
Genie at Bank of America.
He reportedly believed deeply in the Disney brothers' vision and potential, urging his executives to extend them grace and time, preventing foreclosure. A crucial moment.
Then came the war itself, World War II.
The onset of World War II, shortly after Dumbo's release, brought a dramatic shift in the studio's focus and output. The U.S. government essentially took over a large portion of the studio's facilities and manpower.
Making films for the military.
Formed the Walt Disney Training Films Unit, producing a vast number of instruction and orientation films for the military on everything from identifying enemy aircraft to technical skills like, as the sources mention, 4 methods of flush riveting.
Very practical stuff.
Beyond training films, they contributed directly to the war effort's propaganda and morale campaigns. At the request of Secretary of the Treasury Henry Morgenthau Jr., they created short Donald Duck cartoons specifically designed to encourage the public to buy war bonds.
Donald selling war bonds.
And they also produced more explicit propaganda like the short Der Fuhrer's Face, which won an Academy Award.
Wow, an Oscar for that.
And the feature-length Victory Through Air Power in 1943, based on a book advocating for strategic bombing.
So, fully committed to the war effort.
But while these wartime productions were vital contributions and utilized the studio's unique skills, they were not financially lucrative. The sources note they typically only generated enough revenue to cover their production costs.
Just breaking even.
And with European markets cut off by the war, and recent features like Bambi underperforming financially, Walt made a strategic decision to explore new international markets.
Looking south.
He decided to cultivate a new audience in South America, leveraging the U.S. government's Good Neighbor policy, which sought to improve relations in the region.
Which tied into that goodwill trip during the strike.
Exactly. That trip resulted in 2 feature films, blending animation and live action. Saludos Amigos, released in South America before the U.S. in 1943.
And The Three Caballeros.
And The Three Caballeros, premiering in Mexico in 1944 before its U.S. release in 1945. These films were partly government-sponsored and aimed at cultural diplomacy.
After the war, the animation landscape shifted again. The material indicates that the production of traditional animated short films decreased significantly in the late 1940s.
Costs were rising, right, and competition.
Partly due to rising costs, but also increased competition from other studios like Warner Bros. And MGM, which had built successful animation divisions during the war.
So Roy Disney suggested...
Recognizing the financial pressures and changing market, Roy Disney suggested a pivot towards producing more films that combined animation with live-action elements, as these were generally less expensive to produce than full animated features.
Smart move financially, which led to...
This shift led to the successful True Life Adventures series, a collection of live-action nature documentaries that became incredibly popular.
Ah, the nature films. Seal Island.
Seal Island, released in 1948, was the first of these and won an Academy Award, demonstrating the studio's ability to find success in new genres and mediums beyond traditional cartoons.
And then came television.
The company also made a crucial foray into the burgeoning medium of television, which proved to be a transformative move. The Disneyland Anthology series debuted on the ABC network and became immensely popular.
Huge hit.
Exposing the studio's classic library and introducing new material to millions of homes weekly. A notable example of its innovative content was the Man in Space episode in 1955,
With Werner von Braun.
made with input from none other than Werner von Braun, the former Nazi rocket scientist who became a key figure in the U.S. space program. This episode blended education and entertainment, showcasing potential future technology years before the U.S. even had a space agency.
Pretty amazing foresight. Alongside the Disneyland series, 2 other Disney television programs gained considerable prestige and popularity. The Mickey Mouse Club
A cultural phenomenon.
and the Zorro series, a live-action adventure show. These shows helped solidify Disney's presence in the new television market and promoted the studio's characters and upcoming projects.
But the relationship with ABC didn't stay smooth.
No, it eventually soured around 1959. The sources suggest several points of friction. Walt reportedly resented the number of commercials that ABC inserted into the Mickey Mouse Club,
Felt it ruined the show.
feeling it disrupted the show's flow and purpose. Conversely, ABC claimed that Disney overloaded the show with promotional material for the park and other ventures.
So tension between creative and commercial demands.
Exactly. Early tensions in the new TV landscape.
Despite these external shifts and the diversification into live-action nature films and television, innovation in core animation continued under Walt's oversight in the post-WWII era.
Still pushing the boundaries. They produced features that pushed technical boundaries, like Lady and the Tramp in 1955.
In CinemaScope,
The first animated film produced in the widescreen CinemaScope format, adapting to the changing theatrical exhibition standards.
following that, Sleeping Beauty in 1959 was produced in Technirama 70mm, another large-format widescreen process.
Visually stunning, resulting in some of the most visually detailed and stylized animation the studio had produced.
And pushing further into efficiency without sacrificing quality, 101 Dalmatians in 1961 was groundbreaking.
Ah, the Xerox process.
As the first animated feature to extensively use the Xerox process to transfer animators' drawings directly onto cells. A significant technological and aesthetic shift away from the traditional hand-inking process.
Changed the look, didn't it? A bit scratchier.
Yeah, a different aesthetic. The Sword and the Stone followed in 1963. These films demonstrate that even as the company expanded into other areas, the pursuit of innovation in animation remained central.
This continuous drive for innovation, coupled with his desire to create shared family experiences, eventually sparked Walt's most ambitious vision, one that went far beyond the screen and into the physical world: the theme park.
Disneyland. The sources make it clear that the idea for Disneyland wasn't a sudden decision. It grew out of a long-held dream of Walt's to create a place where adults and children could genuinely have fun together.
He saw other parks were lacking.
Right. He had visited traditional amusement parks and saw their limitations often dirty, geared only towards children, with little for parents to enjoy. He envisioned something different, something cleaner, more imaginative, where families could share experiences.
To bring this complex vision to life, he formed a dedicated company specifically for the planning, design, and construction of the park, initially called WED Enterprises,
Which became Imagineering.
now known globally as Walt Disney Imagineering. The creation of this separate, multidisciplinary team was crucial because building Disneyland required blending artistic design, engineering, architecture, landscaping, and storytelling on an unprecedented scale.
A whole new kind of company.
The sources describe the genesis of Disneyland as the direct realization of this deeply personal, long-nurtured dream.
Disneyland officially opened its gates in Anaheim, California in 1955. It is owned and operated by what has evolved into Walt Disney Parks and Resorts.
And the concept was bigger than just rides.
The concept behind the park, as laid out in our material, was ambitious. It was dedicated not just to entertainment, but to the ideals, dreams, and historical events considered important to Americans. It was intended to be a living museum of Americana, a place that celebrated history, fantasy, and the promise of the future.
But even as Disneyland was being built and found immense success, Walt's visionary mind was already looking ahead. His vision extended to the East Coast for an even larger project in Florida,
Walt Disney World.
which would eventually become Walt Disney World. A key component of this Florida plan, and perhaps the most ambitious and reflective of his forward-thinking idealism, was the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, or EPCS.
And EPCI wasn't supposed to be a theme park, right?
No, not at all. The sources emphatically state it was planned as a fully functioning futurist city designed to showcase new urban living concepts and technologies.
A real city of the future.
It was meant to be a key part of his idea to literally change how people lived. He envisioned it blending theoretical learning with practical, real-world application, a place where new ideas could be tested and refined,
Fostering morality and engagement.
helping to form moral principles and foster civic engagement. It was conceived as a recommended model for society based on practical work, fun, and morality, a truly utopian concept.
Tragically, Walt Disney died in December 1966, before the Florida project was anywhere near completion.
A huge loss.
Mm.
But his brother, Roy O. Disney, who had always managed the financial side and was perhaps more grounded in business reality, stepped up to lead the company.
And Roy made sure Florida happened.
The sources highlight Roy's determination to ensure the planning for Florida continued exactly as Walt had envisioned. As a direct tribute to his brother and to honor his legacy, Roy insisted that the entire Florida complex be named Walt Disney World.
Walt Disney World Resort eventually opened in 1971, initially featuring the Magic Kingdom Park. Over the decades, it expanded significantly, later incorporating other parks, like Piazzetta.
Which opened in '82, but very different from Walt's city idea.
Right. Then Disney's Hollywood Studios in '89 and Animal Kingdom in '98. The material makes it clear that while Walt's initial expansive vision for Epcot as a functioning city was never realized,
The dream changed after his death.
the history of Walt Disney World is undeniably tied to his foundational ideas and Roy's crucial leadership in making the resort a reality as a lasting tribute.
Shifting focus slightly from the projects to the man himself, the sources offer fascinating insights into Walt's personal persona, which was often quite different from the cheerful, folksy public image he projected,
Uncle Walt on TV.
especially later in his life through the Disneyland TV show introductions.
Yeah, the material describes him in ways that might surprise some. Playwright Robert E. Sherwood, for instance, called him almost painfully shy, diffident, and prone to self-deprecation.
And biographer Richard Schickel suggested that Disney deliberately hid a naturally shy and insecure personality behind his more confident public identity.
Others, like those cited by Kimball, suggest a degree of conscious performance, that Disney played the role of a bashful tycoon who was embarrassed in public.
He seemed aware of it himself. The sources include a revealing quote attributed to him, speaking to a friend. "I'm not Walt Disney. I do a lot of things Walt Disney would not do. Walt Disney does not smoke. I smoke. Walt Disney does not drink. I drink."
Wow, a real separation between the persona and the person.
One critic in the sources simply described the private Walt as common and everyday, contrasting with the larger-than-life figure seen publicly.
And internally with his staff. Not much direct praise.
Many accounts note that he gave little direct verbal encouragement. His expectations were exceptionally high, and his nature wasn't to lavish praise. The sources suggest his version of high praise was often just a simple, understated, "that'll work."
That'll work. High praise indeed.
Instead of explicit compliments, the material indicates that Walt would often show his appreciation for high-performing staff in other ways, such as giving financial bonuses or recommending them to others in the industry.
So, indirect recognition.
Expecting that recognition and praise would be conveyed indirectly. This management style, combined with pressures like the salary cuts leading up to the strike, certainly contributed to complex relationships within the studio.
Towards the end of his life, the sources note that Walt's health began to visibly fail in July 1966. He grew increasingly pale and appeared exhausted more frequently.
And that old polo injury. He also suffered from chronic pains stemming from an old polo injury that affected his back and leg.
Walt Disney died on December 15, 1966, just 10 days after his 65th birthday.
There's a fascinating, almost legendary detail mentioned in the sources regarding the period immediately after his death.
The film for the board.
Reports surfaced that shortly after the board of directors met to discuss the future, they were shown a short film that Walt had made before his passing. In this film, he reportedly addressed the board members individually by name and stated his expectations for each of them regarding the company's future direction.
Incredible. Speaks volumes about his foresight and continued influence, even from beyond.
And influence was certainly needed to steer the company after the loss of its visionary founder. Leadership transitions marked the decades that followed. As we mentioned, Roy O. Disney initially stepped in, notably ensuring the Florida project proceeded.
But then later, Michael Eisner arrived during a tough time.
Right. A key figure who took the reins during a challenging period was Michael D. Eisner. He became chairman and CEO in 1984. The sources described Disney at that time as being in flux, having been significantly overtaken by other major Hollywood studios.
The company wasn't doing so well then.
The state of the company in 1984, according to the material, was concerning. Its film library was considered limited, with barely 158 features, especially compared to competitors. Furthermore, its initial cable venture, the Disney Channel, was reportedly losing money.
So Eisner had a big job to do.
Eisner recognized the need for significant change and expansion. His strategy, according to the sources, was aimed at maximizing existing assets while simultaneously broadening the company's reach.
Like adding Touchstone Pictures.
This included adding new film distribution brands beyond the core Walt Disney Pictures label, such as Touchstone Pictures and Hollywood Pictures, allowing the studio to produce content aimed at more adult audiences.
And he changed the management style.
Eisner was described as a believer in a less rigid, more horizontal management hierarchy, working to improve communication and collaboration between different departments, and actively to cut through traditional corporate red tape, notably through mandatory weekly meetings.
Fast forwarding to a more recent and equally transformative era of leadership, we have Bob Iger.
Iger's path to the top is detailed in the sources and is quite illustrative of working one's way up. He initially joined ABC,
Which Disney later bought.
Right. Joined ABC in 1974, starting, as the material notes, with menial labor for a modest $150 a week.
Worked his way up. That Calgary Olympic story is interesting.
He steadily climbed the corporate ladder. A notable moment mentioned in the sources came in 1988 when he was the senior program executive overseeing ABC's coverage of the Calgary Winter Olympics. This event was famously plagued by disruptive weather and scheduling delays.
Bad luck with the weather.
The sources credit Iger's team with adapting quickly, pivoting their coverage to focus heavily on compelling human interest stories, like the unlikely Jamaican bobsled team or the British ski jumper Eddie the Eagle.
Ah, Cool Runnings and Eddie the Eagle.
This strategic shift under pressure paid off handsomely, achieving record ratings for ABC and bringing Iger to the attention of key network executives who championed his career advancement.
Showed he could handle pressure and find the story.
Demonstrates a knack for finding success amidst challenges and understanding what resonates with audiences, skills that would serve him well later.
Under Iger's tenure as CEO, Disney embarked on a series of massive, game-changing acquisitions that dramatically reshaped the company and the entertainment industry.
Pixar first.
Yeah. The sources highlight the acquisition of Pixar Animation Studios in 2006 for $7.4 billion in an all-stock transaction. This brought not only highly successful and beloved animated franchises like Toy Story under the Disney umbrella,
but also the Pixar Brain Trust.
Integrated the creative genius of Pixar's leadership, like John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, into Disney Animation.
In a fascinating side note from the same year, the sources detail how Iger managed to reacquire the rights to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Got Oswald back how?
He accomplished this through a unique negotiation with NBC Universal, essentially trading them the services of longtime ABC sports commentator Al Michaels in exchange for the Oswald rights.
Trading a sportscaster for a cartoon rabbit. Creative deal-making.
Shows a creative, outside-the-box approach.
Perhaps even more impactful than Pixar was the acquisition of Marvel Entertainment in 2009 for $4 billion.
Huge deal. Some question that price tag at the time.
However, the sources point out the incredible strategic success of this move. By 2014, just 5 years later, the global box office revenue for Marvel Cinematic Universe movies alone had already exceeded that initial acquisition cost.
Paid off massively. Provided Disney with a vast library of popular characters and established a massively successful cinematic universe model.
Iger became chairman of the board in 2011, solidifying his leadership position. Looking at the current landscape of the company, our sources outline the sheer breadth of their film distribution brands.
It's enormous now.
Encompassing a truly massive portfolio. The core Walt Disney Pictures, the acquired Touchstone and Hollywood brands, Miramax, though its status has shifted, the giants brought in through the Fox acquisition like 20th Century Studios, and of course Pixar and Marvel Studios.
The future direction of the company, as described in the material, is positioned as stable, yet requiring constant vigilance. There's a clear emphasis on maintaining the quality that has historically defined the brand while continuing to innovate.
Both creatively and technologically.
A key focus is leveraging the immense value of existing intellectual property and characters, but also the necessity to explore and develop new characters and stories to keep the content pipeline fresh and relevant.
And there's a push for diversity.
Furthermore, the sources explicitly mention the need for the company to keep up with global trends and notably to make its movies and storytelling more diverse and inclusive, being sensitive to representations of race, gender, and culture.
That's clearly a strategic imperative today.
Reflects societal expectations. On the physical side, Disney Experiences actively pursuing unprecedented expansions at parks and resorts worldwide, signaling continued massive investment in the physical destinations.
And the sources also touch upon the impact of the company's significant investment and strategy in the streaming wars,
Disney Plus, a huge focus now.
noting that its effect on the company's stock performance is a topic of extensive analysis in other works. This highlights how modern digital distribution models are now central to the company's ongoing evolution and financial health.
Stepping back from the corporate evolution, it's crucial to look at the broader impact of Walt Disney's work and the company he founded. Beyond the business figures, what has been their lasting effect on popular culture and society?
Our sources underscore that Disney's creations, the movies, the products, the characters, are invaluable cultural assets. The way they have been received, understood, and interpreted over generations offers revealing insights into society itself.
And often seen as teaching lessons.
Many Disney stories are seen as teaching valuable lessons. Mulan, for example, is specifically mentioned for its theme of volunteering and service. For many parents, encouraging their children to watch Disney films is seen as a positive choice, promoting values and providing wholesome entertainment.
The influence on children's views is particularly significant. The sources discuss how Disney films can shape children's understanding of concepts like diversity and kindness. For many, the Disney brand is seen as embodying kindness and positive values.
And it's linked to broader societal ideas, too.
The works are also seen as playing a role in defining aspects of modern American society, linked closely to concepts of consumerism, leisure time, the pursuit of self-fulfillment, and mass consumption, creating shared cultural experiences around media and theme parks.
Interestingly, during the Cold War years, Disney also played a role in public education and shaping perspectives on emerging national priorities.
Like space exploration.
Productions related to space exploration, such as the Man in Space episode of the Disneyland series featuring Wernher von Braun, combine science, humor, and fantasy to make complex topics accessible and exciting.
Calling space travel a remarkable extension of human capability.
Walt also actively encouraged parents' leadership in their children's development and suggested integrating parent education with activities designed to stimulate children's interests, particularly in science and learning.
So the influence spread into homes in many ways. The sources highlight how his creations permeated millions of American homes, subtly influencing perspectives and values.
This leads directly to the role of Disney's creations in formal education and learning. Our sources explicitly state that his films and products are widely used in educational settings,
As teaching aids,
serving as effective teaching aids across various subjects.
teachers, according to the material, utilize Disney films and related materials to teach subjects as diverse as English language skills, geography, history, mathematics, and social sciences.
The engagement factor must be high.
The blend of engaging visuals, clear narratives, and often embedded thematic elements makes them valuable resources in the classroom.
Furthermore, the material references Walt's own approach to learning and education, his scheme, which aimed to mix theoretical learning with practical application,
Giving students ideas, goals, meeting curiosity.
and helping form moral principles is mentioned as a recommended model for education based on practical work, fun, and morality. This philosophy is seen as underlying some of his later ventures.
Like CalArts.
The California Institute of the Arts, or CalArts, is presented as a direct legacy of this educational philosophy. Funded through Walt's will, it aims to follow his ideas about arts education.
Offering programs in animation, film, music.
Right. The sources note it offers programs not just for college students, but also for high school students in various creative fields: animation, creative writing, dance, film, music, theater arts, and visual arts. The presence of specialized labs is also mentioned, reflecting a focus on hands-on, practical learning.
Additionally, the Disney College and International programs, which began in 1981, represent another facet of Disney's role in education and professional development.
The internship programs at Disney World.
These programs recruit university students and young professionals for semester-long internships at Walt Disney World. The sources highlight that these offer significant learning opportunities, with courses approved by the American Council on Education, ACE.
So you get academic credit too.
Providing participants with both academic credit and practical experience within a massive corporate environment. The growth of these programs over the years demonstrates their perceived value.
Now, it's essential, as the sources we have compiled are comprehensive, to look at the other side, the criticisms and controversies that have been associated with Disney throughout its history.
Right, it's not all positive feedback. One significant area of critique highlighted in the material is the presence of stereotypes in the films.
Concerns about harmful messages.
Yes. The sources discuss concerns that some younger viewers may internalize harmful messages, for instance, seeing violence portrayed as a legitimate tool for conflict resolution. More broadly, the criticism is raised that some animated films can idolize or perpetuate stereotypes.
Specifically, ethnic imbalance and male chauvinism are noted as recurring issues in Disney's historical output.
A pointed example cited in the sources relates to the portrayal of characters in Aladdin. The material contrasts the depiction of Aladdin himself.
Lighter skin, no accent.
Presented as relatively light-skinned without a noticeable accent, arguably aligning with a Caucasian appearance, with the villains and more background Middle Eastern characters,
Who are often depicted differently.
These characters are often depicted with beards, heavy accents, carrying swords, and presented as inherently threatening. The source presents this as a clear example of racial bigotry and the problematic practice of stereotyping characters based on historical, often negative roles associated with their ethnicity.
That's a strong critique.
Another criticism discussed is the perceived simplification of complex moral issues, giving the impression that the world operates in absolute terms of good and evil.
Clear heroes and villains.
While this can be effective in children's stories, the critique suggests it may give children the impression that real-world situations lack nuance and the significant gray areas that characterize adult life.
There's also an interesting critique regarding the potential for Disney's popular imagination to subtly constrain our own.
How so? Limiting imagination.
While Disney films are celebrated for fostering imagination, the argument is made that our conception of unrealistic or fantastical imagination might, perhaps without us even realizing it, become limited or confined to the specific kind of fantasy that Disney portrays.
A subtle limitation rather than expansion.
Exactly. Beyond the content of the films, the corporate practices of the Walt Disney Company have also drawn significant criticism as detailed in the sources.
Like the copyright issues.
One frequently cited point of contention is the apparent contradiction that the company built much of its early success on adapting stories that were already in the public domain, fairy tales like Snow White, Cinderella, Pinocchio,
Using public domain freely.
yet has aggressively lobbied to prevent its own highly valuable intellectual property, particularly Mickey Mouse, from entering the public domain.
The Steamboat Willie copyright just expired, but the lobbying has been intense over the years.
The material also includes accusations regarding the company's treatment of workers, with general claims of poor working conditions sometimes being raised.
And that Spider-Man headstone story is mentioned.
A specific, highly sensitive controversy mentioned in the sources involved a child's headstone. The company was reportedly accused of being exceptionally insensitive or even demanding the removal of a copyrighted Spider-Man image from the headstone of a deceased child whose family wanted to honor his love for the character. That's presented as particularly distressing.
Terrible, if true. While the effort to keep Mickey Mouse out of the public domain by extending copyright terms is well known, one source goes further,
Suggesting it's bigger than just Mickey.
suggesting that the larger, more problematic issue is Disney's lobbying efforts aimed at influencing politicians and legislation to prevent trademarks and characters in general from ever reaching the public domain. They argue this extends far beyond just protecting Mickey.
Some critics, as cited in the sources, express a strongly negative view of the company's practices, going so far as to call Disney a giant leech feeding off other people's creativity.
Strong language.
Arguing that its financial power allows it to operate with impunity in acquiring and controlling intellectual property, sometimes to the detriment of original creators or the public domain.
A particularly sensitive and complex controversy extensively addressed in the sources is the accusation of anti-Semitism leveled against Walt Disney personally.
This comes up often. How do the sources handle it?
The material provides a range of perspectives on this issue, reflecting a historical debate. The Walt Disney Family Museum, for instance, acknowledges that some ethnic stereotypes common in films of the 1930s did appear in early Disney cartoons,
A product of the time.
a product of the era. However, they strongly push back against the idea that Walt himself was anti-Semitic.
What evidence do they offer?
The museum and other sources point to several pieces of evidence. They note that Walt donated regularly to Jewish charities. Crucially, he was named the 1955 Man of the Year by the Beverly Hills chapter of B'nai B'rith, a prominent Jewish service organization.
B'nai B'rith gave him an award.
Yes. The sources emphasize that this organization conducted its own review and found no evidence of anti-Semitism on his part, with the award plaque specifically lauding him for exemplifying American citizenship and fostering intergroup understanding.
What about his employees?
Furthermore, the material states that Disney employed numerous Jewish individuals throughout his career, many of whom held influential positions within the studio. Importantly, the sources claim that no employee, including those who might have had other grievances or disliked him for different reasons, ever accused him of making anti-Semitic slurs or taunts.
Joe Grant is mentioned.
Joe Grant, a Jewish story man who worked very closely with Walt on many projects, is quoted as explicitly stating he saw no evidence of anti-Semitism and felt the whole idea should be put to rest.
And the Sherman Brothers story.
Another piece of anecdotal evidence cited comes from songwriter Robert B. Sherman, who, along with his brother Richard, wrote many iconic Disney songs. Robert Sherman reportedly recalled an instance where Walt fired an attorney for making anti-Semitic remarks directed at the Sherman brothers.
So, lots of points against the accusation.
However, the picture isn't entirely simple, as presented in the sources. Neil Gabler, who had unrestricted access to the Disney archives for his biography, concluded that while Walt himself was not anti-Semitic, he willingly allied himself with people who were anti-Semitic. Gabler specifically references Disney's association with the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals,
The anti-communist group.
an anti-communist group formed in the 1940s that was rumored to have anti-Semitic undertones among some of its members. Gabler suggests this association, even if Walt's focus was solely on the anti-communist aspect, contributed to the anti-Semitism reputation sticking.
Even though he distanced himself later.
Despite Disney reportedly distancing himself from the MPA after 1947.
Finally, the sources include a personal anecdote from Walt's daughter, Diane Disney Miller, offering another perspective on his character.
What'd she say?
She recounts her father's acceptance when her sister Sharon began dating a Jewish boyfriend, quoting Walt as saying it was wonderful how these Jewish families have accepted you.
So it's clear from the compilation of sources that the accusation of anti-Semitism against Walt Disney is a debated topic with various arguments and pieces of evidence presented both for and against.
Based on actions, associations, testimony.
Based on his actions, associations, and the testimony of those who knew him. The material presents these different viewpoints for consideration. It's not a simple yes or no.
Let's also look at the significant economic impact of the Walt Disney Company, particularly using Orlando, Florida, as a compelling case study, where Walt Disney World is located.
A huge impact there, obviously.
Our sources indicate that the impact of the theme parks on the Central Florida area has been nothing short of paramount to its growth and expansion. Before Disney World, the land was largely devoted to citrus groves, limited manufacturing, and significant areas of swampland.
They basically built modern Orlando, didn't they? The material notes that Disney undertook massive land acquisition and development, including draining large portions of swampland, even with help from the Army Corps of Engineers, fundamentally transforming the region's landscape and economy.
However, the sources also present an alternative, far more critical view of this economic impact.
Not all positive.
One perspective argues that the impact on Central Florida, despite the jobs created, has been devastating. They suggest that the sheer scale of the resort primarily attracts low-income service jobs,
Leading to people needing multiple jobs.
leading to situations where people have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. This creates conditions of desperation, sadness, and can contribute to increased crime rates in the surrounding areas.
That's a harsh assessment.
Adding to this critical view, another observation highlighted is the significant impact on the cost of living near the parks.
Prices go up.
The material points out that prices for essential goods and services, such as housing, gas, food, and hotel accommodations, tend to be significantly higher in the areas immediately surrounding the massive Disney complex.
So complex effects, opportunities and pressures. The book, Married to the Mouse, Walt Disney World in Orlando, is referenced as providing this deeper analysis of the relationship between the resort and the local area.
So pulling all of these threads together, The biographical details, the creative and technological innovations, the business evolution, the cultural impact, the educational influence, the criticisms, and the economic realities. What does all of this mean for understanding Walt Disney and the company today? What is its relevance to you?
Well, you can definitely trace a direct line from those incredibly humble and challenging early life struggles of Walt's, the harsh upbringing, the loneliness on the farm that fueled his imagination, the relentless work ethic demanded by his father, the resilience after early business failures,
All those things shaped him.
to the relentless drive, imagination, and determination that built this vast global enterprise. That initial spark, nurtured in difficult circumstances and amplified by key partnerships like the one with his brother Roy and the artistic talent of O-Works, evolved from simple, crude cartoons into a global force.
And the spirit of innovation that characterized the early studio, pioneering synchronized sound, full color, and breakthrough technologies like the multiplane camera,
That wasn't just for back then.
wasn't just about the films of that era. Those early technical ambitions set a precedent and established expectations that paved the way for the sophisticated animation and filmmaking techniques seen in today's massive blockbuster movies, both within Disney and across the industry.
It's baked into the company's DNA.
It's also remarkable how the characters and stories created under Walt's direct supervision, from the foundational Mickey Mouse to the enduring appeal of Snow White, Pinocchio, and Bambi, still hold immense cultural power.
They're still central, aren't they? They remain absolutely central to the company's identity and continue to resonate with audiences across generations. They exist alongside the massively successful yet distinct intellectual properties brought in through more recent acquisitions like Pixar and Marvel,
Showing they can hold on to the classics and acquire the new stuff.
demonstrating the company's ability to simultaneously cherish its classic legacy and adapt to acquire new cultural relevance.
Understanding this full history also provides context for navigating Disney's complex and sometimes contradictory legacy. There is the undeniable wonder and positive impact its role in sparking imagination, providing family entertainment, and its genuine use in education, as our sources noted.
Real, tangible contribution.
These are real, tangible contributions to culture and individual development.
But as our sources also detail, this positive impact exists alongside valid and important criticisms regarding historical stereotypes in films, the company's corporate practices, and the significant economic effects, both beneficial and challenging, on communities like Orlando.
Why is it important to understand this duality, this debate? Because a company with this scale of cultural influence and economic footprint inevitably shapes society in profound ways.
You need the full picture.
Understanding its origins, its motivations, its successes, and its criticisms allows you to be a more informed consumer and a more engaged participant in the cultural landscape it helps define.
Exactly. Whether you are planning a visit to one of their parks, sitting down to watch a Disney movie with family, engaging with Marvel or Star Wars content that is now part of the Disney universe, or simply living in a world where Disney's cultural and economic presence is pervasive.
It's everywhere, from theme parks to streaming services, from toys to news media.
Understanding its origins and evolution fundamentally changes how you see the company today. It's not just a facade of magic, it's a product of a remarkable, complex individual and a constantly evolving business navigating an equally complex world.
Give you essential context.
It provides essential context for everything from their creative choices to their business decisions and their societal impact.
So thinking about the incredible journey, the continuous innovation, and the vast cultural and economic influence that all began with Walt's simple dream of a place where families could have fun together. What responsibility does a company of this scale and reach have in shaping society?
A big question.
And how should we, as consumers and members of that society, critically engage with its pervasive presence in our lives? That's something worth mulling over long after this deep dive concludes.
Indeed. Lots to think about there.
Thanks for listening to All in All.